if your church website is invisible to ChatGPT, you're practically hiding from the people that you're trying to reach in your community. Would you agree with that?
100%. You go back a few years ago and people were like, COVID happened. And it's like, everything's online, You remember those days? It's like, you have to be relevant.
Well, welcome to the 176th episode of the Missional Marketing Podcast. My name is Bart Blair, and I'm joined, as always, by the CEO of Missional Marketing, Mr. Jason Hamrock. Good day to you, Jason.
Good day, Bart. How you been, my friend?
I'm doing very, very well. At the time that you and I are recording this, we are wrapping up 2025, looking ahead to 2026. And as you well know, on our landscape as a company, as an organization, we've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and we're gonna finish out our recording year. Actually, start off the 2026 year with a conversation about artificial intelligence. Before we do, tell me, how do you really feel about AI, Jason?
I've always said that I don't know where it's all headed. Obviously, the train has left the station, so we can try to hold it back. It's not going to do any good. I'm actually excited about where everything's headed because I believe that God's got great plans for us. And this wasn't a surprise to him. And he's allowed us to create everything. And like everything, you can use it for good and you can use it for evil. So when it comes to AI, are we going to choose to use it for good? My sense is that that's what we want to focus on, is how do we help people meet, know, and follow Jesus using AI?
A year and a half ago, I was dabbling in AI. Probably not a day goes by now that I don't use AI in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's work related, ministry related, or even just personal stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, I see that it's going in a direction where David Thorne, our colleague, Dr. David Thorne, has mentioned many times that at some point we'll stop probably using the term AI, and it's just going to be lumped into all technology. But today, AI is still something that a lot of people are talking about. And so we're going to have a little bit of a conversation, kick off the year on a conversation about AI, because it's obviously not going anywhere. And I think it is something that everyone needs to have sort of on the forefront of their their ideation, where they're going, what we're doing. Today, we're going to talk specifically about websites. You and I have been working together for been 7.5 years now at this point. And, it wasn't long ago that you and I, when we were talking to churches, we would basically tell a church, if your church is invisible to Google, your church is pretty much invisible to your community. And we were basically initiating these conversations to help churches understand that both from an SEO standpoint, as well as utilizing Google's advertising platforms, we want to help churches connect with more people in their community. Today, I think we could just as relevantly say that if your church website is invisible to ChatGPT, you're practically hiding from the people that you're trying to reach in your community. Would you agree with that?
100%. You go back a few years ago and people were like, COVID happened. And it's like, everything's online, You remember those days? It's like, you have to be relevant. And it's just it's a pattern that people take, because we do this because of people. We build websites, we also because people matter. God tells us to love the Lord, love God, love people. And so people are going to investigate you online before they attend. 9 times out of 10, they're going to watch you online. And so you need to be found online, and you have to have optimize your website. We have been talking about that for so long, but you are right, Bart. Boy, things are changing, and they are changing so rapidly. It's a little scary about where things are headed.
Yeah, people form their first impressions online. And so we've talked a lot over the course of years. We have many podcast episodes related to user experience on a website. We've talked a lot about SEO, local SEO, how to be found online. Yeah. We've talked a lot about advertising. We're going to do another episode here in a week or two on the topic of advertising online on platforms. Today, we're going to talk specifically about websites. As I've kind of gone through the last 3 to 6 months in our engagement with churches that we partner with, I've had a lot of conversations with churches about, hey, where are you in the life cycle of your church's current website? I'm working with a lot of churches that, they built a website either during the pandemic or coming right out of the pandemic. Some of them are saying, hey, we think it's about time for us to either do a refresh or to do a whole new website build. And so the conversations that I'm having with them are to ask them questions about how they intend to optimize their
Yeah.
website, whether it's a refresh or a new build for artificial intelligence.
Yep.
When you're getting a scope of work for a church website today, it's going to be a very different scope of work, or ought to be a very different scope of work than the website you built 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 7 years ago if you happen to be living in a website built in 2018, 2019. Hopefully you're not, but if you are, now is probably the time for you to be rethinking that. And so what we're going to do in our conversation today, Jason, is we're going to explore 6 essentials to having an AI-friendly website. Because the reality is AI is drastically changing the way people engage with the internet and engage with online content. And we want to make sure that you as a church leader, as a communications director, that you're best positioned to make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening in the AI space as it relates to online searches and online engagement, so that your website is found and so that the right things are being said about you online. All right, so you ready to hit this? I'm gonna interview you here for the next few minutes, about some of these 6 essentials. Okay, the first one is this. Let's start with let's start by defining some terms. AI search optimization, or GEO. In our house at Missional Marketing, we tend to use the term GEO, which stands for Generative Engine Optimization, which is different than search engine optimization. Some people might say answer engine optimization. Some people might say large language model search. There's different ways of going about this. But if churches are still primarily thinking about Google when they build a church website, why does the scope of work need to address AI search or AI prompt differently than the way Google works?
Well, let's make sure we have a baseline of this. So I'm going to speak to what I call Google search, because everybody understands that that's search engine optimization, and AI search, which is kind of prompts inside these large language models like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, and so on and so forth. So AI search, Google search. Well, Google search is a platform that's not dead. Okay, Google isn't like gone away or anything like that. We just understand that there's a transition of users moving sort of away from Google search over to AI search. Okay. And in Google search, as you know, it's a click to your website. It's a one-way conversation. You're asking Google a question, you hit return or search, and it gives you a search result page, and you click on that link. Now you're on that website. Okay. That's traditional and great. You still, this is very, very important. You still optimize your website with Google search in mind. You still have to have content. You still have to have meta descriptions and meta tags and H1s and H2s. You can't, if you're not doing that, start there, right? You've got to have, that's your foundation, that's your baseline. But then you also need to be speaking to these AI large language models, which is basically answering the question that people are asking. And so Google crawlers crawl your website differently than AI search crawlers do. It's different. It's not like different universes, but one focuses on a little bit something else than the other one does, right? And we understand to the best of our abilities what Google search crawls. Now, we don't know everything. If we did, we'd probably be Google. We don't. They give us what they tell us, but there's stuff that the secret sauce they don't share. But what we do know is you got to optimize your website continuously right now for SEO, but you now need to pay attention and start thinking about search for Google or for AI search. And so, keep in mind with the traditional versus the future. And your scope of work, as you think about building a new website, you have to have this in mind, because I'm telling you, it already has been happening over the next 12, 24, 36 months. It is going to be a rapidly shifting market that's going to be going straight over to to AI and using these large language models to find what you're looking for. And I'm going to say this, you guys are going to understand this. Just as I said, a Google search is kind of like a one-click get to your website. That's not the case in AI search. We all know this. You go to Claude and you enter a prompt and it gives you information. and probably ask you a question. You give it another prompt. It's communicating with you back and forth. You actually kind of build this weird relationship with your large language model. At least I have. It actually gives me funny answers. It's like I was asking it one thing, we were going back and forth, and it responded, "Jason, that's gold." What you just said there. What?
Makes you feel good about yourself for a minute. Yeah.
Right. And so that's 0-click results that I'm getting. Now, if I'm going to Claude and I'm saying, "Hey, I just moved. I live in Gilbert, Arizona. I just moved to Gilbert. I've got a wife and 2 boys. I'm looking for a Bible teaching church that offers ministry for my kids, yada, yada, yada." You just kind of ask those prompts. You're going to get a different result versus tell me about what the church means. Like it's probably going to be a 0-click result. And so I'm watching how AI prompts are actually helping me understand what I'm looking for. And sometimes that means I click to go to it'll give me a list of churches to go check out. Other times it's not. It depends on the prompts, but we understand that if you're not showing up, your website actually isn't set up to be crawled by these large language models, you are in trouble over the next 12, 24, 36 months.
Yeah. We may get into this a little bit later in the conversation, but the primary difference between a search engine search and an LLM prompt, an AI prompt, is that the search engine search is designed to drive traffic to your website, to take people to the website. The large language model prompt, or the AI prompt, is designed to provide the user information about your church or organization, which is not the same. And here's the thing. If your website is properly optimized for SEO, search engine optimization, then you're likely going to show up in search results and people will find your website.
Yep.
But if your website is not properly optimized for AI or GEO, then what's going to happen is those large language models are going to extrapolate information about your church from other sources, not your own church website, and provide people information. And it may not always be correct. So you want to make sure that you're optimizing your website for both the SEO as well as the GEO so that you're able to inform both the search engines and the large language models with the best, right, most appropriate, most thorough information about your church because, well, you want people getting the facts and you want the facts to be straight, right? Going back to a conversation you and I had with Jason Collier, our senior developer on our team, he made a statement. I've quoted him many, many times. He said, "The fundamentals of good GEO are good SEO." So the two things are not uniquely, or they're not unique to each other. They're not two separate train tracks that you're traveling on. You've got SEO, which is basically some fundamental stuff that you have to do. AI just goes further down the track. There's more detail, more content, more code that needs to be incorporated in the website, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes.
Yep.
Let's go to our second point here.
Yep.
And that's the basis of the fact that AI search is basically research-based content. And the architecture of your website needs to be structured in a way that it can find the information it's looking for. So most church websites are built around what the church wants to say, but your scope of work needs to address what people actually want to know. A very different perspective here. Now, you and I have been saying this for years as it relates to SEO, but it's even more important with GEO. You need to know your audience. You need to know what questions they're asking. Why don't you speak to that topic?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, as a comm director, we tend to have this idea that nobody reads anymore. So less words and more visuals, more graphics, more videos, more pictures. And I just want to caution you on that big time. I did that. I did this. I made the mistake. I paid the stupid tax. I swung that pendulum way on the other side from great content over to like no content because nobody reads. The problem with that is, well, Google does. And now, like what you just said, AI is taking that like to a whole nother level. And you want to be really mindful and careful about that. And as a comm director, I don't want people guessing. I don't want them to go just kind of scratch their head and make them have to think too hard. I want them to know if they're looking for a church to offer stuff for our kids, they're gonna hear about it. They're gonna find that. We don't want misinformation. And so as you think about that, most church websites today are what we want to share with you. Here's what we believe. Here's our mission. Here's our history. Here's what we have to kind of offer. Instead, what you want to do, and you said just a second ago, guys, this is so big. You want to answer the question people are asking. You want to answer the question people in your community are asking. Do you even know what they're asking? Well, here's the beautiful thing about AI is you can learn that really, really clearly. And so when I'm thinking about building a kids ministry page, okay? Yeah, usually you go there and it's like, well, our kids are in a well-protected, we screen our volunteers, they're going to eat goldfish and have a good time. And, here's when we have kids ministry, da, 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 da. But you want to go so much more deeper than that. And you actually want to have content on your website, especially, we'll get into this, right? How you structure that on the back end. That's answering the question that moms and dads are asking so that you show up in those AI prompt answers, right? You're actually showing up there. And so as a comm director, I'm telling you guys are content machines. You create content. So beyond just the, what's it like to bring my kids, you also, we've talked about this, you're answering the question for ring 2 people. Ring 2 rings, three rings to your audience. Ring 1 are your people, ring 2 are people looking for a church, and ring 3 are people that are dealing with a felt need problem. Holy cow, can AI really go to town on helping people with a ring 3 problem like nobody's business. And here's the deal. Y'all are content generating machines. Your pastor preaches on a weekend and probably says 3,000 words. You can use AI and those tools to help you create that content that's going to go and answer those questions for those ring 3 people. But when you think about ring 2, what are the questions people are asking? Now, Bart, let me throw it back your way. When you're thinking about that, and our second point about this, developers, what kind of research can you actually do to find what people are actually searching for?
Well, I think there's both a technical answer to this as well as a practical answer. There are a number of different keyword search tools that you can use online to see what people are Googling. And I would say it's safe to say that whatever people are Googling, they're probably also asking in the large language models when they're prompting ChatGPT. But the difference is they tend to be asking more detail-oriented questions. I've been, coaching churches on the fact that a lot of people use voice assistants to do their searches now online, whether they're using Siri or their Google Assistant or Alexa, right? And so they'll get online and they'll ask what we would refer to as a long tail keyword question, right? So, hey, Siri, can you tell me what time are the services at Grace Community Church in Mesa, Arizona? And Siri will give the response, right?
Yeah.
And what Siri is having to do, or the search engine behind Siri, is find the content, find the website, and then formulate that into a response that makes sense based on the way that you're asking it. And I think some of those things are super obvious and super practical. But I think the other part, when I say it's non-technical, is like every church, if they're if their goal is really to reach the lost people in their community, people who are far from God, I think that there's more community exegesis that you need to go through. Every church should have sort of that profile, that persona of the person in their community who's like the average person that you might run into at the grocery store. And I always challenge churches to do this. Could you name like the top 5 to 10 worries, fears, or problems that the people in your community have, right? Is it job security? Is it food security? Is it a housing situation? Do they worry and fear for their kids? Obviously, those types of questions are going to be more those ring 3 questions. But I also think, hey, what are kinds of questions that people who are curious about faith, curious about God, or curious about our church, what are the questions that they might be asking? And so that might be worthwhile just putting a team together and just doing a big time brainstorm and going, hey, if there were 20 questions that we know we absolutely have to answer on our website? Can we brainstorm those top 20 questions? And then can we create the content on our website that answers those questions and then optimize for both SEO and GEO around those? Oh, and by the way, there's a really good chance you might already have sermon content that actually answers a lot of those questions. So
Absolutely.
you just extrapolate that sermon content using AI to create that content for your website, and you're already a step ahead. But the content needs to address direct, real visitor concerns and questions. You have to be really careful about not using too much marketing language, too much insider speak. You want to give clear, direct answers that's what the AI tools, the large language models, are looking to extract and to provide in their responses to prompts to people. So you have to make it clear. Clarity is key in all of this, because you don't want the large language models, or the search engines for that matter, having to try to interpret your marketing speak or your
Well, and you said just a second ago, you want your website to be that position of authority. It's the gospel. It is the truth of what we say around here at our church, not some third-party website that may have a review or something like that. That's pulling that information in. That would not be good.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk a little bit and pivot to sort of our next key element here, and that is conversion paths. A lot of churches, and we're not talking about a conversion to faith in Jesus. We're talking about conversion on your website.
Great conversion.
Yeah, which is something that Google Analytics does track. It tracks the engagement that you get on your website once people have clicked to your website. So let's say that someone discovers your church through an AI tool. They land on your church website. If I'm working on a scope of work with a website developer, a website designer, what should the scope of work require when it comes to conversion paths? What's the roadmap that I'm trying to create for people?
Well, I mean, you kind of said this. Friction will just kill momentum, right? And people don't know. If they don't know you, they don't trust you because they don't know you. So if you have to make me think, you're in big trouble. And so as an AI tool actually recommends you and they click, make it super simple to find what they're looking for, and answers like what time are services and where are you located if you're multi-campus, what do I wear, what do I bring, are my kids invited, all those questions and answers that a lot of churches all recommend, like an FAQ, that to really think through about what people are asking. And so you got to make sure that's really, really clear and easy to find. And so that's like that's a good conversion. In fact, I really like and enjoy putting other kinds of things on the website that actually maybe a form or something that's easy for somebody to fill out. Not like this 20 questions. Don't go there, but something very simple that they can answer. Like, I love how you do this, Bart. Let us send you an email on everything to expect for your first visit. Enter your email address, hit submit. And then boom, in their inbox, it perhaps is either text or it's a PDF about what to expect on their first visit. What a great idea there, right? I love that. So conversions in this kind of case isn't necessarily just a click of a button, like they went to the give button and gave, which is great. It's action that moves somebody closer towards attending. And I think it's safe to say that, we zoom back out. Our goal is to reach the one who doesn't know Jesus. The 99 is important, but we want to reach the one, and we want to move them towards sitting into a seat so that they eventually can say yes to Jesus and start to follow him and become discipled at your church. Like, that's the overarching goal, right? That's not hard to understand. So in this process, when they're on your website, we want to create conversions of getting them to their next step in the journey. And so it's more than just a button. It's actually trying to move people along. And I think the other thing is you'd want to, you kind of said this, to zoom back out and let's map this entire journey of a visitor from I would even, maybe it's even before, well, it's probably in a SEO kind of like found on Google or found in some kind of large language model, right? An AI tool recommends you. And they may not stop there. Once they go to your website, maybe they go check out your Google business profile. Maybe they jump over to social media. They're on your website. The goal is to move them towards getting into a seat and then on their way. But I think you want to map out that entire process. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you got to make each step simple and clear. There's a reason that churches develop discipleship pathways and not
Yep.
discipleship toolboxes. And I'm speaking from firsthand experience where I led a church where we created a discipleship pathway, and then we decided to take it apart, disassemble it, and make it a disciples toolbox. So we had, training and programming to help people grow in their relationship with Jesus. And once we took the pathway apart and we put it into a toolbox, nobody did nothing. When it was a pathway, the majority of people sort of knew what their next step was. We made it clear for them. So we took that toolbox apart and then we put it back into a pathway, and lo and behold, people started moving along the pathway again. So even when you're thinking about the user experience and the user journey on your church website, you want to think in incremental steps. What's the first thing that you want them to do? One of the biggest mistakes that I see on a lot of church websites, homepages, is too many calls to action. It's join a group, it's visit us on Sunday, it's watch a service online, it's give, it's sign up to serve in a ministry. There are too many options, and people get paralysis by analysis. It's like going to the Cheesecake Factory and getting the menu from Cheesecake Factory, and you're like, well, I don't even know what to get. There's too many things in this thing. So simplifying the user journey doesn't mean that you can't have all the content on your website that you need to have on your website, but you want to lead people down a path based on the fact that, hey, if our ultimate goal is to get a person onto the church website who's spiritually open, who's not yet following Jesus, who is exploring our church for the possibility of trying our church so that they can get their big spiritual questions answered and find their way home to God, how do we design our website and the journey on the website around that person's experience, rather than trying to be a catch-all for everyone, for everything? If the target is everyone, you probably hit no one, right? And so we want to really make sure that we're as well-defined and streamlined as we can. I think that one of the reasons conversion is important, Google tracks it. I just, as you were talking about this, one of the things that I thought of is there's a large language model called Perplexity. It's not one that I know a lot of people use. I have it on my phone and I use it quite a bit. Perplexity is a competitor to ChatGPT and Claude and Grok. Yeah. Perplexity, I read an article, not too long ago talking about sort of what their goal is with engagement of users. And while the church doesn't sell products and services, imagine that you sell Apple Watches. I don't know. You sell Apple Watches. That's your business. And somebody's online looking to buy a smartwatch of some sort. And what Perplexity boasts itself on is actually saying that by the time the user has read through their prompts and everything that we've delivered, they're going to click to your website, and the conversion rate is going to be higher than when Google sends people to your website. Because by the time they get to your website, they've already done the research, they've already learned everything that they need to know, they've already made the decision that they're going to buy. And so they click from Perplexity onto the business website, and they're more likely to convert, aka buy the product.
Yeah.
I think that we need to build our website with that in mind, thinking that if we build our website and that user journey is very, very clear, when the large language model does send someone to our website, that there's a higher chance that they're actually going to plan that visit or do that thing that we want them to do. And we need to think about that in advance.
Ooh, that's really good. Yeah, because I think, there's a thing called pogo sticking. Yeah. In the Google search world, where you click on something, you're laying on that site, you're like, I don't like it. What do? You hit the back button. You do that over and over and over and over and over again. That's not the same as engagement on an AI platform. I tell you, when Claude's recommending something to me, I'm kind of going, yeah, I like what you're saying here, Claude. I use Claude all the time, right? Yeah. So I've bought things, I have fixed things, I have researched things from Claude and found pretty true. Like it doesn't really lead me down a wrong path. Yeah. And I think there's some subliminal things happening in somebody's mind when they go, well, I really sort of trust this large language model because it tends to steer me in the right direction. If I'm looking for a church and it says I should go to Grace Community Church based on my prompts, I'm going to go check them out. Well, you're more likely at least to watch a sermon and go, yeah, I think I like these guys. Okay, let's go ahead and plan a visit. I mean, that seems.
I'll give you a complete non-church example of how I've been using AI. So I'm planning a trip next summer to a region in the northeast of the United States, and I plan to play golf for a few days while I'm there. And what I did was I pulled up Google Maps in the area where we're going to be staying, and I pulled up all the golf courses in the area. So I used Google Maps to do that. But now I'm using Perplexity to actually give me a review and an analysis on, hey, if I'm going to be in this town for a week and I'm going to play golf 3 times, what are the 3 courses that would actually be worth my while playing? And I want to start with the easiest course and finish with the most challenging, option. And I want to keep my budget within this amount, right?
Mhm.
And Perplexity is going through the entire World Wide Web. Well, and the church or the golf course websites and Reddit reviews and Yelp reviews and Google Business Profile reviews, and it's creating a report for me to help me make a decision. And so ultimately, by the time I click to the golf course's website, I'm ready to book my tee time. Like I've already decided these are the 3 courses that I'm going to play. And I'm not even really looking at the golf course websites. I'm using Perplexity to help me do the heavy lifting of deciding what's going to be most appropriate for my experience. And I think that's the way people are starting to use the large language models more and more often.
Rewired.
Yeah, completely rewired. Yeah, exactly. It's a different experience. Okay, for the sake of time, let's keep moving. I think one of the big questions that I know that we were asking not too long ago, and we've actually started to get some answers on this, and it's addressing, I think, what is probably the biggest blind spot that most churches probably have, is that we have conditioned ourselves to depend on Google Analytics as our primary means of measuring what's happening online. Like we go to Google Analytics and we go, okay, we got this is what people are searching for. This is how they're finding our website. This is how much time they're spending on our website. These are the pages they're visiting on our website. But it no longer tells the whole story.
No.
Why does the scope of work for a new website need to include, or a re-envisioned website, whether it's a new website or a re-envisioned website, why does the scope of work need to include some sort of large language model monitoring?
Yeah, because Google won't tell you what the questions people are asking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But large language models do. In fact, we're going to share this in a little bit, but we offer an AI audit that will actually help you understand the people around your community, what questions they're actually asking that relate to you. How cool would it be to know, here's the list of questions that people are asking, and here's the platforms they're using to ask these questions, and that you can answer those questions. And now you will show up in those large language responses as people are asking those questions. Google Analytics is fine, but boy, that's like, I can't even, that's like comparing, Pee-wee flag football to the NFL. Like I can't even tell you the difference, that the gap right now of, and this is what's really, going on with Google. It's a huge gap in terms of what you can learn, with large language models teaching you what you need to know to put on your website. Imagine having those tools. Well, that's something that we're trying to solve for the churches we get to serve, because we think education is the first thing. You got to be educated about what's going on here. Second is, now I can go do something about it, and giving you guys the tools, the data, so that you can go build your website to reflect what people are asking. That just makes all kinds of sense to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because our reputation is something that ought to be super, super important for us as churches, right? And so what's interesting is that up to this point, like Google Analytics tells us nothing about the impression that we give to people when they come to the website. Our Google reviews do. And so we kind of judge our reputation based on our Google reviews. But let's face it, most of us who have Google reviews, most of the reviews we have because we asked people who love us, who know us, like us, and trust us, to write reviews. Then on the rare occasion that somebody writes something that we don't like, we often try to get it removed, right? Because we don't want those negative reviews online. Oftentimes negative reviews end up being like super irrelevant. I got the one church that shares a parking lot with a fitness center next door to their church building, and they constantly get negative reviews because the church members, with permission, are parking on Sundays in the fitness center's parking lot, and the people from the fitness center are writing negative reviews about the church because the people use the parking lot, right? It's not really an adequate review of the church. But what these tools that we're looking at can do is they can actually tell you what the emotions are and the perceptions are of ChatGPT and Gemini, like when people are asking questions, what's the general temperature that people have towards your church and its reputation? And then we can be a little bit more proactive with the content that we are creating and the way that we're managing our online reputation through our website, through our optimization, to make sure that our reputation is consistent with what we're trying to communicate internally and externally.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm watching the clock here, and we've been going for a while. We got two more points.
Great
Okay,
topic.
2 more points. Okay, all right. The fifth element, not to riff on the movie there, the fifth element. We're going to get a little bit technical.
Yeah.
Schema markup and structured data implementation is nothing new. It's always existed in the SEO world, but I think it's become way more critical in the AI world. Can you talk a little bit about why schema is so important in a scope of work for a new website?
Yeah. So schema, you guys can look this up as schema markup. It's basically the code added behind the scenes of your website. You right click to look at the source code. You could search schema, and there you go. You want to have proper schema. Schema is basically answering the question, right? If you don't label things in a certain manner in your schema, you're going to force these large language models to go find somewhere else to find this information, like Reddit. We've just said, that's a huge warning. Warning, you do not want these large language models given misinformation, okay? So your schema markup is that information that answers those questions. And so if you've got a really bad schema, and I'll tell you, this is telling. You want to schedule a call with Bart and I? Do it. We'll walk you through and show you how. But I'll pull up the church website. I'll right click, look at the source code, pull up the schema. It's like nothing. And that is no good, right? But you can answer the questions that people are asking. What is it y'all believe? Where are you located? What do you have to offer me and my family? What's the benefits of why I should come to your church? Right? All those things that people are asking can be put into the schema. You got to think through this. This is so important. And I'll tell you, if it's not built right in the schema on your website, you are leaving it up to that AI to go find it somewhere. And we don't want misinformation. So your scope of work, when you think about a brand new website, really needs to include this idea of schema markup, and it's so critical. It's got to be part of the conversation. And that's that swing, that pendulum in, just right to make sure that you have good, healthy, helpful information for what people are asking in a prompt. You want to answer that question. You can't avoid it. If you do, you're going to be in trouble. But that's a little bit of a schema. There's definitely more to that, but we don't have time to go.
I've used this analogy. I don't know if it's a good one or not. You can tell me if you think it's a good one. I built a home a few years ago. I'm living in the home that I built, and when I look around my home, I see walls. The walls are made of drywall. They're painted, and they have things hanging on them. What we see when we come to your church website, the pages, the images, the content, the copy, that's like looking at the drywall. The schema is like the framing and the studs that hold the drywall up. And if you don't have studs to nail the drywall to, then you don't have the structure that you need that holds it all together. And the reality is, this is the way I try to explain this, is that the large language models, they're reading schema first, they're looking for schema first, and then they'll read the copy that's on your pages. If they read the copy that's on your pages, they're having to interpret it. And these are machines, right? These are machines trying to learn what you mean when you say this. Whereas the schema is written in a way, when it's really well put together, it makes it crystally clear to the large language models what the answers are to the questions that you're trying to answer on those specific pages, and not leaving it up to any interpretation. So it is a really important thing. Most churches, if they've done any of their SEO homework over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, they might have local schema on the home page of the website that kind of defines the address, the phone number, the name of the church, the service times, and the GPS coordinates. Like that might be the max that you have in schema, but there's so much more that you can do with schema to make your church website AI ready. Okay, last point that we're going to discuss today.
Okay.
We talk about the long game here. Okay. In 2026, let's say you build a new website, and then 2027 comes around, and all of a sudden, well, AI is going to be different in 2027 than it will be in 2026. How should the scope of work for a website that I might build in this calendar year, how might I want that scope of work to incorporate the flexibility or the things that are necessary for future changes that we see in AI and these large language model tools?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you guys, we build a lot of church websites. And so I'm positioning every website we build with the one over the 99, right? And so aesthetically, it's got to be a great looking website. It's got to look clean, or let's say the church is more modern. It's got to have that modern look, or whatever it is they like. It needs to be well branded. I want that consistency, that cohesiveness. When you check us out online, social media, Google Business Profile, our website, and then you walk through the doors of our church, we want that cohesive brand built in, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. You want to have a great designed, well communicated website. But I'll tell you, what platform you build that on absolutely matters. There's a lot of great platforms out there. I won't say any names, but a lot of you guys have used these, I call them sort of third-party platforms that you can build a website on. And it looks good. It's easy to use, all that kind of stuff. I want to caution you because, I want to caution you because what we just talked about this last 41 minutes and 20 seconds is all about where things are going. The train's left the building, guys. It's not like, and I think about 3 or 4 years, this is already happening. It's already happening, and it's not slowing down. Why that matters is this. If you choose a platform that's closed sourced, that doesn't have schema markup in mind, or doesn't play well or talk to these large language models, you're in trouble. I want to highly recommend you think about going somewhere else, an open model. So do yourself a favor. Go to your large language model of choice, go to ChatGPT and ask it, does this, and then insert your platform that you're using your website on, does this platform work well with AI search in mind? Basically, you're asking AI, tell me if the platform I've chosen to build my church website on is going to be good for us in the future or not. And I'll just say it right now. I know WordPress is open source. That's why we chose to build all of them on WordPress. People say, I don't like WordPress because, well, it all depends on the theme you chose. WordPress is safe, secure, is open source. It speaks incredibly well to both SEO search, Google search and AI search. So just do yourself a favor and use Claude or ChatGPT to find out if the platform you're actually using is something you should be using in the future. Do yourself a favor and do that. And I'll tell you, if you're building your website, like a few years ago, or you're thinking about building your website now, I'm telling you, this thing is evolving. You want to build your website on a platform that's going to allow you to add in and evolve with these amazing tools that are coming out. They're going to help you be so, I'll say, this isn't in the script, I don't think, but just go ahead and start to search for agentic websites. What is an agentic website? We'll get in that in another episode, but I'm telling you, that's where it's all going. And it's just a matter of time. We were just having this conversation with our leadership team earlier today. Is it a year from now? Here it is, December 16th of 2025. Is it a year from now? 2 years from 3 years? I don't know. I don't have that. I don't know the future. God does. But I know it's on its way, and it's on its way a lot faster than anything else in the history of technology that's evolving.
Yeah, well, if you're listening to this podcast episode, it's going to be on January 9th or later. So I'm speaking into the future because we're recording this on December 16th, 2025. But this episode will be released at the end of the second week of January. I'll just add this, Jason. And again, I'm not going to name names, but I will say this. There are a handful of really good, easy to use website platforms that are designed specifically for churches to use. And I just want to create some perspective here that AI is changing so quickly, so rapidly, that the technology that powers websites needs to also be evolving and progressing pretty aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just think about it this way, if you're using or considering a platform that is used exclusively or primarily by churches, the market share for those platforms is going to be very, very small when it comes to all websites, which means from a revenue standpoint, okay, maybe you've even chosen it because it's not an expensive platform. The companies that run these website platforms are simply not going to have the ability to invest in the infrastructure and the development of their website platforms to keep up with AI. Whereas when you're using open source, like an open source like WordPress, or a closed source like Squarespace that has millions of websites built on Squarespace, those would be my top two choices, generally speaking, most of the time, because WordPress is open source, so it's not going to get left behind. Squarespace is probably the second biggest contender behind them. They're not going to get left behind, and there are a few other players that are in there. You just got to be future thinking, because we used to build websites and we would live in those websites. In fact, you might be listening to this episode and you're like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years into your current website. You're not going to be able to do that anymore in the future. And that's going, if you do plan to do that in the future, you will find yourself constantly behind the 8 ball when it comes to the advancements in technology, because things are advancing so very, very quickly. So keep that in mind as you are considering what platform you're going to build the website on. We're going to wrap this up now, Jason. These 6 elements, I don't have time to recap them all, but I'll make sure that they're in the show notes. And you can go to our website at missionalmarketing.com, click the podcast link there, and we'll have all this. We'll have the transcript as well as the show notes for this episode, so that you can kind of go back through it if you need to go back through it. The reality, all the things that we're talking about now, like it could literally change by Easter this year. I hope not. I hope that it's just getting better. But the things that we talked about in this podcast episode, these are not nice to haves in your new scope of work in your website. These are the foundation of what the new 21st century website is going to require in order to be functional in an AI-powered internet. That's my parting shot, Jason. How do you want to leave our audience today?
Yeah, as you're watching this episode, there's a lot of learning that's going on here. We love to teach, but here's a great takeaway. You may not be planning a new website in 2026 or 2027, but you need to be thinking about where you fall when it comes to AI. That's why we are offering an AI readiness audit specifically built for churches that allows you to see clearly how your website, your domain is positioned in these large language models. And it allows you to, it has a lot of tools added to it, a lot of reports added to it. We do the research for you. We specifically built this tool and partnered with another company to build a tool to actually walk you through. So if you're interested in having that AI readiness audit done, you just got to go to missionalmarketing.com. Or connect with Bart or myself. We'd love to explain that to you. Every church needs to take on this opportunity. Again, it doesn't matter if you just built your website or you build your website in the future. Adding content to your website is key, and every week you keep creating new content, more and more of it, right? And so having an AI readiness audit to let you know where you stand is what you need to be educating yourself about. And so just reach out. That's my parting take, is go ahead and jump on that opportunity. Go to missionalmarketing.com, reach out to Bart, myself. We'll talk to you about that. And it's been fun to do this for churches, and they get a sense of where they are. Now you've got a roadmap for the future. What you see the gaps that you have.
That audit, we've tried to make it as affordable as possible, so almost any church can do it. It creates both the audit for you as well as sort of a roadmap, a punch list of things that you can be working on, and we'll have somebody on our team go through that audit with you to make sure that you know how to interpret what you see there. So make sure you take advantage of that. Go to missionalmarketing.com and you can schedule an appointment with Jason or somebody else on our team, and we'll be happy to get that taken care of for you. All right, this may be one of the longest podcast episodes that you and I have ever recorded, especially just the two of us. We've had some long interviews, but this was a good one. I think very necessary, very helpful. The 176th episode of the podcast. Jason, I'm guaranteeing that in 2026 we will cross the 200 mark. We didn't do great in 2025, but we're going to line ourselves up, and we're going to keep pushing out content for you that we hope is helpful for you. If you did find this podcast episode helpful, please make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, whether that's a Spotify or Apple Podcasts or somewhere else. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. Hope you all having a great start to your 2026, and we'll see you next time.